and we have Ray Bonecrusher. I don't think that's your real last name, but you on YouTube it's called Bonecrusher. And so you have been following the same story that we've been following. What the hell? So my first question: how did you get interested in like from your perspective? What is like what's the appeal? Why are so many people interested in this story?
Oh, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, we hear you great.
Okay. Well, initially I got involved because of actually worrying about freedom of speech on the YouTube or on any media, social or anything else. And when I got involved, there was back and forth neighborhood or neighbor to neighbor dispute going on, and it kind of got my interest. And the fight that was going on, well, it's kind of hard to explain it, but there was a lot of bully tactics going very quickly on this. In other words, it was just full steam ahead, roll over some people that looked like they couldn't defend themselves when you're on the outside looking in. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hard to explain, but it gets to your conscience it very early.
Mm-hmm.
And I had made some statements on there to the fact that I thought there was a problem either with a split personality or, something mental issues. I thought it was more than just a neighborhood dispute.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting hits from some of these people that follow Mr. Hale's channel.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were not that great. I'm just telling you.
Mm-hmm.
And I did get hits from people that followed Michelle and John, but they didn't hit me like with vile words or threats. Okay. They just said, Ray, you don't know what you're talking about. Get into the background and look at Jeremy. Look what he did before he got here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did. And when I looked at it, I couldn't really prove too much. There was a lot of hearsay. There was some things out there. Part of his stuff is behind a curtain of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
I did notice that he'd gotten a divorce. I noticed that it was within a few days of losing his job or quitting or whatever he did with that religious camp set up in churches. And then I happened to see the dispute he had with the landlord, or actually the owner of a warehouse that he was using. Mm-hmm. And I seen where a relative of that woman had actually stopped there, and he purposely got up as close as he could to that car. And when they pulled out, it looked like they had brushed his leg, but in fact, he had moved so close they couldn't pull out. And he kept trying to force them and was very aggressive to both occupants, one an older woman and another an elderly gentleman that happened to be related to the warehouse owner. And it just looked like this is being a forced thing for assault, if you will. Mm-hmm. Now, boy, if this guy does that to somebody like that, and this neighborhood is going on, and other people started saying, well, he likes to sue people. And in fact, he'd kept his wife in court, his ex-wife, over the years. And to this date, I think there's probably, if you look back, you'll see some court cases as late as, I think, last year, but I'm not real positive because I didn't go all the way into the family court situation that was going on there. As I got deeper into it, I got more threats. And one of them was from Mr. Hales on his channel has said that everybody that had voiced opposition to what he was doing, he was going to knock on their door and those people would cry like a baby and run off. I don't know if you've ever listened to me, but I'm not a person who'll back up. And I don't care how old I am or how tough you think you are. There's no way I'd ever back up. I just won't. It's not never. I'm not that kind. Mm-hmm. And the best way to get my attention is to threaten. And then now I'm going to go look. And that's what I started doing. I started looking. Now, I'm not tech savvy. I retired over 15 years ago. That's the last time I took a class on this thing. I didn't even want to learn how to use these things. If you can imagine, I mean, I've known him since very first, back in the 50s. They built the first one. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Built the
It was
first
about
one.
half the size of my garage. The
The first
University of
one
Iowa actually made that.
made
The very first
one.
computer.
The first
Computer.
computer. Okay.
Right. And it was slower than the mind, much slower. Well, anyway, getting past that, that's all BS. But the habits of this guy, more and more, it came out as a bully effect. Well, slowly but surely, there's a word that comes up all the time: money. Okay, so now I'm looking at him and I'm saying, okay, now I see what this guy is all about. And I've dealt with people like this in the corporate world for years. And they always say the corporate heart very cold. And I think you probably would agree with me on that. You make some decisions that aren't in the best interest of the people you're dealing with, but only with the people that are your partners in business. And I thought, wow, now this guy, he does have enough college education and he knows how to speak. He's not afraid to get on there and pull people in. Now, the best speakers in the world are preachers, ministers. They raise millions and millions of dollars. There's no doubt in my mind, if he wasn't doing what he's doing right now, he would be one of Falswell's best pals because he's that good behind the pulpit, except for one thing. Have you ever followed have you ever listened to him preach?
A little bit. What's the problem?
Did you ever hear the one where he told the joke about this elder woman that was listening to him and said that she wouldn't come back if he came back?
No.
Well, he used it as an example. Okay, this older woman didn't like him, that he was preaching. And he thought maybe he wouldn't be invited back because this elderly woman in the congregation didn't like him. And he gets a call from the minister. Now, this is a joke, okay? And the minister said, would you please come back and speak again? And he said, well, something about the fact I didn't know if I'd be invited because, this elderly woman doesn't like me. He said, we would like you to come back and preach I don't know if it was every week or every month. In other words, he used a joke against an elderly parishioner, which was in bad taste in the first place. And I've never heard a minister do that type of joke that would have in any way that was derogatory in any sense of the word, especially since an elderly person that's in your church, you're going to do everything you can to keep that person in your congregation that's possible. They are your base of your church. And, I know that firsthand because, years ago, I happened to be a trustee in a church and we spent a lot of time with the elderly, especially the ones that couldn't attend. And we would have never done anything like that to disparage their image or the fact that they were old. But then I got to thinking back, he treated this gal that was pretty old at the warehouse pretty crappy. I mean, really did. And he right to this day has one that he's named after her at the front of his schoolhouse that he actually lives in now. So you can imagine he has carried this hate stick to another town. And it's been, 5 years since that happened? 4 or 5 years since he got out of the court cases with this woman and has not let it go. And he pats that woman and kisses her and all kinds of stuff. Now, there's something different there than the norm. I'm just telling you, it's different.
Rick, remember when we interviewed Lindy Morelli? It's basically the exact opposite philosophy. She's all, you got to let it go. You can't keep that hate bottled up. And she was the victim of a sexual assault as a child, as a youth, or as somebody much younger than she is now, and has been able to forgive. So one thing I know, he carries a lot of hate for a lot of different groups. He's on video making anti-gay comments. What do you think of the anti-Semitic slur that he uses against Bruce Matzkin, who is the attorney for the neighbors he's suing through Foreskin? You think that's anti-Semitic?
I believe it is. It completely is. It's not good business practice either, by the way, to do something like that. But
no,
you know that
I wanted to add, Rick got Rabbi Belinsky to comment on it. This is, and I'll give the group, but a second Jewish group has come out against it. Jeremy Hales hates Jews, disgusting individual who stands against humanity. The Jew hater is an ugly person and scum. We warn Jew haters there will be a price to pay for insulting Jews. And I'm going to get the group up, but Bruce has pointed this out. So he believes he gets away with it. Why do you think he gets away with it?
Well, how many bullies have you met in your life?
Plenty. And this is the group, Beitar. If you want to go to them, beitarus.org, and they stand and fight against anti-Semitism. I've met many. The thing I've learned about bullies is there's no difference between the playground, the courtroom, any other environment. The minute you stand up to them, you expose them, and that is the way you deal with a bully.
Yes.
In the playground, you stand up to them. In this environment, you stand up to them, and they got nothing. They operate on fear. There's a great scene in a movie that I like called A Bug's Life, which was Pixar when Steve Jobs was running Pixar. And the grasshoppers control the ants, so there's a lot more ants. And these two grasshoppers are in like a bar, and the one grasshopper's talking to the other, and the grasshopper's trying to be nice to the ants. And the other grasshopper goes, "Don't you understand? There's a lot more of them than there are of us. The minute they find out, it's over. We operate on fear." And that's, it just described perfectly the bully mentality. And yeah, I think he operates that way. And the other thing that I'll point out, what you said, he and his followers, they're very distasteful. They're rude. They're condescending. Rick and I interviewed Bruce Matskin. We wanted to talk to everyone. We invited everyone on the program. All we got was like these nasty statements from Megan Fox, Tug, Shizzy. His lawyer didn't talk to us. But for what? What are you accomplishing, and how does that help you by insulting people? That makes no sense. But so far, he's, for the most part, gotten away with the anti-Semitism and the hate. And
Mike, I'll tell you something. And Ray, you can jump in here, but I found that when you're dealing with a bully, the best way to deal with a bully is you crack him right in the nose.
I did that.
And that's the thing. It's like, and it was really in the movie last year, Reagan. The Reagan movie was the best example of that, where Nellie tells little Dutch, she says, "These are bullies, and they're always going to be there unless you take care of it." She sends him outside to beat the bully up, punch him in the nose. And I think that's what we got here. We got a bunch of bullies, and I think we got Hales as the king of the bullies, and he hasn't been punched in the nose sufficiently yet to realize that. And the second you do, he's going to start running away and crying like all bullies do. That's what I think we got.
I'll tell you, I've got a story about that in particular. If you want to, it only take me a minute.
Go ahead.
When I was around 5 years old, there was a kid in our block that was a year older and a head taller than me. I came home crying. This kid had beat me up. My dad was standing out there, and he said, "You go back there and you punch him in the nose." And he said, "Make him bleed a little bit." Now, my dad taught me how to box when I was very young. I went back there, and every time I got one of my hands loose, I hit him in the nose, and he bled. I come back up there's actually an alley about a block long there. I came back up there, and I was smiling, and I had blood all over me. My T-shirt, my clothes, my arms. But I was a happy one. I wasn't crying this time. My dad said, "Well, what happened?" And I said, "Well, I kept hitting him in the nose, and he started bleeding. He didn't want to fight anymore." And I said, he was holding my arms down. I couldn't get loose. And he said, "If you promise not to hit me, I'm going to let you go." And so he let me go. And I went home. But I went to school with this guy all the way through until I went in service. And he never once said anything negative towards me the rest of my life. So I stood up to him. He was still tougher than me in high school, but he never tried me.
Yeah.
The same anecdote. I used to go back and forth with Tug and Shizzy, a little bit with Megan. They don't even respond to my emails anymore. So in that sense, you've stood up to bullies. But I think it's easy to stand up to a bully in a playground. It's somewhat easy to stand up to them through the media, but legally, I think it's hard. If you're a legal bully, how do you stand up to a legal bully in the courtroom?
Well, he has money and influence.
Hmm.
Now, I want to tell you something else. The people that got next to him, and we're talking about Megan and Shizzy and Vet
Hmm.
Nation and the Rat Man or Radis, whatever he is.
Hmm.
Uh, if these people ever decide to turn against him,
Hmm.
he will pursue them, and he
Hmm.
has the money to do it. Not any one of them has his ability to get money. None of them. All of them put together can't,
Hmm.
and they know that. So if they step out of line, you remember what happened to MLS?
No, what happened? Who is that?
Whoa, you got to go back. He's a lawyer. You got to go
Hmm.
back and look at his channel. Just put
Hmm.
MLS up there. You're going
Hmm.
to find out that he's a pretty mild fellow. He's very straight shooter. I think he's sharp, but he made a mistake of saying something about the Hales, and he actually had some people on there. Matter of fact, I think he had Bruce on his channel one day. He also had Shara. You've heard of
Hmm.
her?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
We've spoken.
Okay. Well, let me tell you my impression. She acted like a little girl on that show, and I think she was trying to get attention more for her little girl antics than she was for knowledge. That was only an impression, and I don't know anything about that woman. She came after me one day, just mouth foaming, and I haven't bothered her. I'm just telling you. I just said that
Yeah,
she
my
uses
my
repeat stuff.
impression, my impression when I spoke to her is she answered every question with a question, to the point that I went to Google and I said, "What do you call someone who answers a question with a question?" And the AI said a deflector. But what was more interesting than that was on the bottom, said if it's done in serious settings, this is a manipulative person. And
Yeah.
I absolutely felt like I was being manipulated. Now, speaking of legal bullies, this is possibly a lawsuit. It hasn't been served, and you are one of the defendants. But what's interesting, he
Yes.
doesn't know your name.
No,
And if you
right,
go
John Doe.
right, Bonecrusher isn't your, that's not the name on your birth certificate. Am I right? You don't have to give your name, but I'm guessing on your birth certificate, Bonecrusher isn't the last name. So he doesn't actually know your name. And then also, Rick, you can speak to this. Now, the substance of the dispute is two neighbors in Otter Creek, Florida, bad neighbors, and yet one of them is Jeremy Hales. When he files this lawsuit, he says he's a resident of Summit County, Ohio, and he does have a property there. Rick, why would he file claiming to be a resident of Ohio if he seems to be having a dispute with his neighbors in Florida and seems to present to everyone that he lives in Florida? Why would he want to say he lives in Ohio for the purposes of this lawsuit?
Well, there's something in the courts called diversity jurisdiction. And what diversity jurisdiction is if you are a resident of a state, and back when the Constitution was enacted, the idea of you being a member of a state carried a certain type of bias potentially in other states. So if you were somebody from Massachusetts, you probably couldn't get a fair shake in the courts in Georgia. So they put this in and said, and it's still to a certain extent there's regional issues. So they wanted to say, look, you can go to the federal court as opposed to the state court and get a fair shake. And so, in order to have diversity jurisdiction today in the federal courts, you need both complete diversity of citizenship of all of the parties, and you need a minimum jurisdictional amount of $75,000. Now, $75,000 is easy; you just have to allege $75,000 worth of harm. The diversity of jurisdiction means that on both sides of the V, plaintiff versus all the defendants, they cannot be from the same state. So if Jeremy Hales is from the state of Ohio, none of the defendants can be from the state of Ohio.
And we have two right here who are from the state of Florida. So he
right.
can't be from the state of Florida.
If he was from Florida, the case would be thrown out of federal court. Now, if there's a defense
in a convenient way, he's suddenly a resident of Ohio, even though on his YouTube channel. Now, notice one other thing. He has over 730,000 subscribers. He knows better than me.
Across the world.
Across the world. Ray, how many do you have?
Oh, let's see. I've got a little over 8,000. I think I haven't looked lately, but I've lost,
Eight,
4,000
8,000.
over 4 months.
Two Lees in a pod, 3,000. And this guy, Milltown's Best, 1,700. In 80, he says 8,500 for you. And he's suing you for defamation. He's got 730,000. He's actually trying to convince the court that your channel with 8,000, that Lisa's channel with 3,000, and Dave's channel with 1,700, that he has to go to court to save himself, as opposed to just going on his own YouTube channel to correct whatever wrongs you say about him. Do I have that right?
And I have to ask the question to you, Ray. Now, go to that paragraph there, Mike, paragraph 13. Now, Ray, you allegedly have said all these terrible things about Jeremy Hales, yet he does not know who you are, does not know where you live. Have you ever received a notice from him or from Mr. Shockett detailing all the terrible, terrible things that you said and asked for a retraction and or an apology? Has he done that?
No, he has not.
No.
And how long have you been broadcasting, like he says, that you have a YouTube channel? So you're a broadcaster. You're a member of the media. So how long have you been a member of the media?
Well, I've had my channel for a little over 10 years.
So you've been a long-time person in the media. You've been putting out and creating media. And yet this guy does not know your full name, does not know where you live, and did not try to go to the media outlet that's established and ask for a retraction or a correction before running to the federal court to sue you. Is that a correct statement?
Why does he run to his own YouTube channel with 730,000 subscribers and say, Ray Bonecrusher said this, and let me tell you why it's wrong, and save the court? Now,
Mike, that's illegal. You're right. That's a legal requirement, though, because he has to go for a media outlet and ask Ray for a retraction. That's what
he threatened me through his channel. And,
explain how he threatened
I took him up on the threat. I said, okay, come on to my house. I'll meet you. I'll meet you with a smile and a handshake and whatever else you need. Like I say, I'm not afraid. I told him I will not run from you. I'm not scared of you. I said, for one thing, I can't run. You look at me.
Now,
I'm 80 years old, but I'll tell you what, I'll still get up there and duke it out if I had to. I won't take his bullshit. I don't like bullies.
Ray, here's another question. You know, you see him as a bully, as a guy who uses the courtroom as a weapon, as a guy with a lot of hate. Well, are you wrong? Are his viewers wrong? And how come his viewers can't see what you see?
Well, let me give you an example, okay? There have been different ministers over the years that have fooled millions of people out there over the TV, the network. And quite frankly, they speak and they get a crowd of 50s and above. And those are the people that are supporting his channel monetarily. If you don't believe me, you can go in there and look at the stats and it'll show everything that I'm telling you, because the same people that are backing him actually back me. Not the same persons exactly, but the age group. And a lot of these people are lonely people and they want to believe in something. And he's brought up different things and he uses speech. Number one, he tells you at least 3 times what he wants to get across. Every speech he gives, he's very articulate in it. And Richard, you're a lawyer. When you want to get something to the jury,
that's derogatory. I will send you a cease and desist if you continue to call me a lawyer.
He used to be a lawyer.
I meant,
please.
Excuse me. I meant at one time. But when you want to get something across to a jury and you're talking in front of a group, you always repeat at least 3 times during that the point you're getting across. You set it in your speech, and it's a way of it's a memory thing. It forces it into the brain, and those people will remember that.